People actually believe those responsible for the attempted coup, the coup attempt of a duly elected sitting U.S. president, would go unpunished? End to our constitutional republic? No equal justice under the law? No accountability? Escape unscathed? Enjoy the show. Former FBI General Counsel James Baker has flipped. Durham is building a conspiracy case on all of those who lied to the court. Former U.S. Attorney Joe DiGenova was on the Howie Carr show and provided some more inside information regarding General Flynn's case and the unraveling of the coup to remove President Trump from office. Former U.S. Attorney was on the Howie Carr show again this week, and he dropped some more bombshells about the current investigation of the investigators involved in and those involved in trying to remove President Trump and his team from office. Now, Joe DiGenova discussed the Durham investigation and said that it was Durham is building a conspiracy case, and anyone who lied to the court will be indicted for obstruction of justice charges. The bottom line is this: it's unfolding, and what's happening is what Durham is actually doing is he's painting a picture, and not every one of these acts is going to be a specific separate crime, but they are going to be what's called overt acts in a conspiracy. One to defraud the United States government, one to deny the civil rights of Trump, Flynn, Page, Papadopoulos, and a whole slew of other people. And at the 8:55 mark during this interview, DiGenova drops another bomb when he's discussing the notes that were released yesterday that show the government was actively working to frame General Michael Flynn. DiGenova said to Baker, "You know that Baker is working with Durham?" James Baker, the former general counsel. Carr says he flipped. DiGenova said, "Well, who was a target? Is now understandably cooperating because he was looking at the boatload of criminal charges. One of these notes were discovered, and by the way, these were the notes that the FBI director, Chris Wray, and Dana Boente did not want to turn over." At the 10:30 mark, DiGenova goes on to discuss the General Flynn case that is falling apart on the Mueller gang as we speak. He wrote General Flynn was set up and framed by Obama's deep state. He was illegally spied on and coerced into guilty plea by the Mueller gang and his then attorneys by threatening to arrest and indict his son. Neither Flynn or his son committed any crimes. During a status hearing before the sentencing date, the judge overseeing his case went crazy, accusing General Flynn of treason, DiGenova explains. "I have no idea what's in the middle of Judge Emmett Sullivan, who used to seem like he was a really disinterested kind of noble guy. He proved that right in the Ted Stevens case. But his comments during the final status hearing before he set a sentencing date for General Flynn were so awful and so fundamentally stupid, and we found out. We did an analysis. My wife Victoria and I did an analysis of the statements he made on the record. We got the transcript. Remember when he came out and accused General Flynn of committing treason and started asking him a series of questions that the prosecutors who were fumbling, they didn't know how to answer him. He said in a series of statements that the judge did, exact words, line for line, that Rachel Maddow had said the night before on her show. We're commenting on the upcoming Flynn hearing. It's scary. And if that's what this guy is looking at before he comes out on the bench, he came out after a break and apologized for using the word treason. But his conduct since has been very bizarre. I don't know whether the guy is sick, old, or not ready for primetime TV anymore. It seems to be a disease that's going on and prominent in Washington, D.C. Biden can't even talk or remember where he's at. Pelosi can't talk. The judge in the Flynn case can't talk. It's just been amazing. DiGenova went on to suggest that the president is going to pardon Roger Stone or do something before he's put in jail. The judge in that case, Amy Berman Jackson, was horrible, as we've reported on numerous times on the Patriot Hour here. So Obama's crooks and the deep state, the FBI, the DOJ, and the intel communities cannot go to jail soon enough. If they committed the treason that all of our due diligence and reporting and declassified docs and emails show, they should be dealt with swiftly and promptly. We're already past both of those. Again, I am Michael. This is the Patriot Hour. God bless, Godspeed to each and every one of you. And where we go one, we go all.
Every Monday at this time, we're joined by Joe DeGenova, the former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, to discuss the deep state attempt to overthrow the candidacy of Donald Trump and then the presidency of Donald Trump, the greatest scandal in American history and its slowly unfolding nature. And many other people were framed as they tried to frame the President of the United States, one of whom was General Flynn, Mike Flynn, three-star general. And on Friday, apparently the feds finally turned over exculpatory evidence. And I'm going to just let Joe DeGenova explain what happened here. Joe, thanks for being with us here on the Howie Carr Show.
Oh, Howie, it's my pleasure. And let me congratulate you for sticking with this story and performing an amazing public service by keeping it alert. What happened over the weekend was that Bill Barr, as you know, had asked for someone to investigate the investigation of General Flynn.
Right.
But instead of choosing internal DOJ lawyers, he chose a U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Missouri, a guy named Jeff Jensen, who, interestingly enough, is a former FBI agent. Jensen went through the file and delivered a pile of documents to the United States Attorney in the District of Columbia, Tim Shea, who is now handling the Flynn prosecution. And Mr. Shea then turned over all those documents under seal to Flynn's lawyer, Sidney Powell. And what we know about this is what Sidney Powell has said, which is that they are stunningly revelatory of FBI misconduct and show that the general was set up and framed. You and I both know that that is precisely what happened.
Right.
We didn't need these trove of documents to tell us that, but it is very important, and it's now very clear that the Durham inquiry has forced the hand of people inside the FBI, and there's now a mole in the FBI who is leaking to the press about the conduct of current FBI Director Christopher Wray and his general counsel, Dana Buente. And boy, it is
one of your favorites. You've been talking about Dana Buente for months, Joe, and now he got busted.
And Sugar Ray, our great FBI director. But what's very clear is that according to two stories, one in the Federalist and one in the Daily Caller, somebody inside the FBI is now whistleblowing by leaking to the press about what's going on. And boy, it is just fascinating to watch the claim that Chris Wray and Dana Buente did everything they could to prevent the stuff from the Missouri U.S. attorney from being given to Flynn's attorney. That is the beginning of a very ugly story, a side story.
Now, what is the nature of this sealed documentary evidence? Maria Bartiromo revealed some of it today, but what do you know about what is the nature of it? The exculpatory evidence for Mike Flynn.
It's FBI testimony up on Capitol Hill, FBI 302s, which are their reports of interviews,
right.
FBI handwritten notes, FBI amendments to 302s, changes being made, and apparently some interviews that were conducted that were never turned over to the House or Senate committees by the FBI. The bottom line is this: it all deals with how Flynn was entrapped. There's also information about the conduct of Sally Yates, who was then Deputy Attorney General and then Acting Attorney General, both in the Obama administration and in the early days of the Trump administration. It also apparently deals with some people inside the Justice Department who were reviewing wiretaps involving Kislyak, which is a never-told story.
This is the Russian ambassador that Flynn spoke to. And again, he's the national security advisor. If anyone should be speaking to Kislyak, it would be him. And also Jeff Sessions, by the way, who had to recuse himself because he'd been talking to the Russian ambassador, even though he was a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
Yeah, and you know who got him? One of the people that got him to recuse himself beside Rod Rosenstein? Dana Buente, who was then acting deputy attorney general. This story is like a Russian novel. I mean, this is Dostoevsky. It's even better than Dostoevsky. But here's the thing. We now know that Durham is investigating the leak of that conversation between Flynn and Kislyak, and we now know that I don't think he's interviewed David Ignatius, the little twit from the Washington Post who wrote the story, but the person who leaked the information about the Kislyak phone call, because he had legal access to the unmasking of Flynn, was a guy who ran what's called the Office of Net Assessments in the Department of Defense, a guy named James Baker, not the James Baker who was the FBI director.
Right, who's apparently up to his eyeballs in this framing of Michael Flynn, which I'll get to in just a moment. But go ahead with what you were saying.
So the bottom line is this. It's unfolding. And what's happening is, what Durham is obviously doing is he's painting a picture. And not every one of these acts is going to be a specific separate crime, but they are going to be what's called overt acts in a conspiracy. One to defraud the United States government, one to deny the civil rights of Trump and Flynn and Page and a bunch of other people. And I've been told within the last few days that they are also looking at obstruction of justice for anybody in providing false information to the FISA court, false information to the FBI. For example, it's known that Brennan was desperately trying to get information to the Bureau to open a counterintelligence investigation against the president while he was a candidate, while he was in the internecine period, and then while he was president. All of those are being looked at for obstruction of justice. So that's a pretty heavy plate.
I want to just mention, Joe, the story about the investigation of the leaks that helped bring down Michael Flynn. That story was leaked to the New York Times on Friday afternoon. Durham inquiry includes scrutiny of a media leak. And let me just read you this sentence just for your edification, your amusement. Mr. Trump has said he looks forward to the outcome of the inquiry, and a report or criminal charges before the election would all but ensure that he weaponize it for political gain. So it's okay for them to commit crimes to try to frame innocent people. That's totally okay. That's kosher. But if you call them out for trying to railroad you out of office and into a penitentiary, you're weaponizing it. That's the New York Times standard.
And these three reporters, Adam Goldman, Julian Barnes, and Katie Benner, add another doozy. Listen to this. The president and his allies in Congress have long condemned leaks revealing unflattering information about the administration. Well, in case these folks haven't noticed, leaking classified information is not a question of flattery. It's a question of criminality. Can you imagine writing that story and writing those sentences? These people are sick.
Well, Goldman, it says he's won 2 Pulitzer Prizes. I'm guessing one of them was for the deeply sourced reporting of something that didn't happen, which was Russian collusion. He must be very proud of that Pulitzer.
There are so many people with Pulitzers for the Russian hoax. You got to wonder if the Pulitzers are really for comics.
Or for fiction. I'm just reading you. Let me read you what Maria Bartiromo told Doug Collins, the congressman from Georgia, today. Apparently, former FBI chief legal counsel James Baker made notes surrounding the FBI meeting where Strzok and Pientka, these are the two corrupt agents, one of whom's been fired, the other of whom's been buried, interviewed National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. According to Bartiromo, James Baker's notes are exculpatory in that they show that the purpose and intent of the FBI interview was to frame Lieutenant General Flynn.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. And in fact, I was told that by, I don't know if it's the same person that told Maria Bartiromo, but this is part, it may have been actually Baker, because, Baker's now cooperating with Durham. James Baker, the former general counsel, who was a target, is now understandably cooperating because he was looking at a boatload of criminal charges. And once these notes were discovered, and by the way, these were the notes that Chris Wray and Dana Buente did not want turned over to General Flynn. Now, just put your thinking cap on for a second. You are the FBI director. Your job is to do justice, not to frame people, not to make cases,
right,
to do justice. You're the FBI director, and you're the general counsel of the FBI, Chris Wray and Dana Buente, and you do not want that information turned over to the defense to protect the agency. That is a firing offense. And God help us, if the president isn't reelected, that means that Chris Wray will be the FBI director for 8 more years.
Well, it sounds like he'd be a very good FBI director for Joe Biden and the corrupt Democrat deep state establishment if they ever returned. I mean, he's
perfect. He's perfect. He fits the profile perfectly for an FBI director to continue to kiss the Democrats' fanning.
Wow. So is it going to be are the charges going to be against Flynn going to be dismissed this week, or total exoneration?
Well,
what's going to happen?
I have no idea what is in the mind of Judge Emmett Sullivan, who used to seem like he was a really disinterested, kind of noble guy.
Right.
He proved that right in the Ted Stevens case. But his comments during the final status hearing before he set a sentencing date for General Flynn were so awful and so fundamentally stupid. And we found out, we did an analysis, my wife Victoria and I did an analysis of the statements that he made on the record. We got the transcript. Remember when he came out and he accused the general of committing treason and started asking a series of questions of the prosecutors who were fumbling? They didn't know how to answer him. He said in a series of statements, the judge did, exact words, line for line, that Rachel Maddow had said the night before on her show in commenting on the upcoming Flynn hearing. It's scary. And if that's what this guy is looking at before he goes on the bench, he came out, by the way, after a break and apologized for using the word treason. But his conduct since then has been bizarre. I don't know whether the guy's sick or old or not ready for prime time anymore, but it seems to be a disease that's very prominent in Washington these days. Biden can't talk. Pelosi can't talk. The judge in Flynn's case can't talk. It's amazing.
What's going to happen with Roger Stone? I mean, that's another miscarriage of justice, maybe even a worse miscarriage of justice than Michael Flynn.
Yeah, well, I there's no doubt that he has. This judge, Amy Berman Jackson, has really done some of the most awful things a federal judge can do in a case by not granting him a new trial after the misconduct of the forewoman in this jury. I don't know what she's thinking or what she's doing. Clearly, she has evidenced an animus toward the president and toward Mr. Stone, none of which is justified by the nature of the crimes, particularly given the way Stone and his wife were treated during the raid that was authorized by that idiot Mueller and the thug Weissman who worked for him. The president is going to pardon Roger Stone. If he is sentenced to a term of imprisonment, I mean, he has been already.
Yeah.
He's got
to go off. He's got to turn himself in next week, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's either this Friday or next Friday. I can't imagine the president's not going to pardon him. I don't know that, but I would be shocked if the president didn't pardon him or commute his sentence. You don't have to pardon him. You just have to say you don't have to serve your sentence.
Joe, this is all banana republic third world stuff. You keep expecting these prosecutors to come out with wearing shades and epaulets on their shoulders. You know, I mean, this is a total. These are one frame job after another. When is it going to end?
That's what I said the last time I saw Mueller. I said, Comandante Mueller, may I ask you a question? Comandante Mueller.
He's another one that's gone.
I was expecting him to be in Havana, Cuba, driving a 53 Chevy.
Oh wow! Well, I hope Flynn gets totally exonerated, as Maria Bartiromo said this week. This has gone on long enough. This is ridiculous.
He will be. Even if the judge doesn't recognize it as an exoneration, it will be recognized as such. This is the most disgraceful prosecution in American history. He was framed by people in the FBI and the Department of Justice. And the White House at that point, under Donald Trump being led by Don McGahn as White House counsel, were totally unprepared to deal with any of this. And the disgraceful conduct of Comey and the FBI and James Baker and Strzok and all the people, Pientka, all the people involved in Flynn's interview, all of those people should go to prison, every single one of them, including Sally Yates.
I agree. Joe DeGenova, thanks for being with us, and keep us in the loop, and we'll talk to you again next week. Thank you.